Today we're going through the cleaning and modeling data in Microsoft Fabric. I would like to make this as interactive as possible, so while you see a bunch of slides here, the majority of time is going to be spent actually in Microsoft Fabric in a live demo. So that's me. And then here's the flow for this series of sessions we're going through. Today we are on session 2, cleaning and modeling data. The prior session was about bringing your data into Fabric. And then after this session, we're going to get into creating and training a machine learning model in Fabric based off of this data. For anyone that was here last time, this is all based around a sample customer churn data set. So we're going to continue to use that same data set through these sessions. Cool. Agenda for today. Again, we're just going to briefly touch on what is Microsoft Fabric. And then I'm going to do a real quick recap on what we did in session 1. Basically, I'm just going to show the data that we brought in session 1. Then we're going to jump into cleaning data with Dataflow Gen 2, modeling data with Dataflow Gen 2. And then we're going to go into what cleaning and modeling or preparing that data looks like in a notebook versus Dataflow Gen 2, because there are different ways of achieving your end goals with different tools in Fabric that can kind of lead you to the same spot, but there's some different intricacies of each approach there. What is Microsoft Fabric? Fabric is integrating a whole bunch of Microsoft's data tools into one platform. So Power BI, Azure Data Factory, Azure Synapse, and then a whole bunch of new real-time intelligence capabilities have been unified with a single licensing requirement. And while this slide is talking about how Fabric also simplifies the analytics workflow, for anyone that was at Ignite or listened to some of Microsoft Ignite stuff, was it about 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago? Even transactional databases are now being brought into Microsoft Fabric, which means that Microsoft Fabric is essentially a one-stop shop for your entire data layer, whether it's a normal transactional system. So say you're building out a web application, you could have Fabric as your backend for the transactional side of it and also for the analytics side of it. So they're really building out this one-stop shop for your data layer across Microsoft, which is pretty cool. And then AI machine learning is being tied into this at every level, same as what you're seeing with pretty much every other product in the world, software product in the world. AI is being layered in at almost every layer. So here's the Fabric ecosystem. This diagram actually probably needs to be updated after Ignite. I think they've rolled data science, data warehousing, and I think it's data warehousing and data engineering and data factory have been rolled into one little bucket because they've brought in the databases, that transactional side of this. But for the most part, all of these different functionalities sit on top of Copilot for Fabric, sit on top of OneLake, and are governed and managed by Microsoft Purview. For today, we're still playing in this data engineering space, doing notebooks, and the data factory space using data flows. We might also, if we have a bit of time, we might touch into shortcuts as well today. We'll see how things go. And then in session 3, we'll be right in here with machine learning. And then session 4, we'll jump down here for Power BI and maybe a little bit of data activator. So what that means is it is demo time. Anyone that wasn't here last session, which is about 2 months ago now, we built out an initial lakehouse and we retrieved data from the same data source, a customer churn data set, and we did it 3 different ways. We used a data flow, we used a notebook, and we used a pipeline. And each of these had its own kind of quirks. Data flow being no code, data pipeline being kind of low code, and then notebook being what they seem to be calling now pro code. where you're actually doing coding in the notebook. So that's how we got data into our lakehouse here. And as we open up our lakehouse here, we can see the different, oh, we also manually uploaded data. That was another way we did it, because that is an option. So it was manual upload, it was a data flow, it was a pipeline, and it was a notebook. Those are the 4 ways. And the data is the same regardless of the way we brought it in. It is customer churn data, so it's a bunch of data about a subscriber to a telecom. And in that data, we have a whole bunch of information about each subscriber. Things like whether they're a senior citizen, do they have a partner in dependence, how long have they been a customer, do they have phone service, do they have internet service, what other internet services or streaming TV services do they have, what kind of contract do they have, what's their payment method. And then in here, we can see things like the monthly charges and their total charges, which is essentially just monthly charges times the tenure field over here. Although they've given that separately. And then it tells us whether that customer churned or not. This piece here isn't really going to be critical until we get to training our machine learning model to determine if customers are going to churn or not churn. And as I said before, each of these is essentially the same data, just was ingested in different ways. Okay, and again, just a different way of ingesting the same data. Cool. So we're going to jump back to our workspace here because what we're going to do today is start to clean and model some of this data. What we're going to do, we're going to create a new data flow. So we were able to ingest data with the data flow, and you could potentially ingest the data and clean it and model it all in one step. But there are benefits of having your raw data landing and keep it separate from your cleaned data and keep it separate from your modeled data. And in the data world, especially recently, you would call this what's called the medallion architecture, where you have a bronze layer of raw, unfiltered data, you have a silver layer of cleaned, filtered data, and you have a gold layer of modeled data ready for business intelligence. And then you can connect your machine learning models into silver if you want to do machine learning off of clean data, or into the bronze layer if you want to do machine learning off of raw, fully raw data. Again, we're ingesting data with this data flow. We're going to create a new data flow now. So just new item. And we can either find it in here. We are using data flow Gen 2, not Gen 1. We can either find it in here. We can also filter things down up here and find it a bit easier. So we're going to create a data flow. Initially, what we did is we pulled data from a SQL server that we had set up. Now we don't need to do that because our data is already in Fabric, right? So what we can do here is we can come in here and say, again, data from our one data hub. So data that we've already ingested into Microsoft Fabric. This is going to show us a whole bunch of stuff that we already have in here. I'm going to connect to our Academy accounts, which is the one we've been using so far. And this is one of those nice things about Fabric is in a lot of systems, if you're trying to connect to data set, there's a lot of action work and application work that needs to happen in order to make this work. Fabric is all already wired together. Authentication between the systems is already wired together, so you don't have to go through as much of that. So we're going to pick out this one here, which is the one that we built with our data flow, and we're going to create. So this is going to create our initial data flow. You'll see it looks like this, and you'll just see the raw data here. You'll see what data types have been assigned. So senior citizens have been picked up as a whole number. Tenure has been picked up as a whole number. A long person has been with this service provider. And if we down here, we're going to see things like monthly charges has been picked up as a decimal, and so is total charges, which for the most part makes good sense. Now, one cool thing about data flows is you can turn on this column profile and you can tell it that you want to see the column quality details and the value distribution. What this is going to do is give you brief insight into your data set. And if we start to walk sideways here, we'll see that for the most part, we've got 100% valid data in here. I mean, it's accurate. It just means that it aligns to this data type. There's 0 errors, means that it wouldn't align to this data type. And it's not empty, which is great. And we're going to keep walking down here. And we're going to put this down at the end here. This load. So we can see that 1% of empties, there's a whole bunch of nulls here. And we can come here and look, okay, well, there is a monthly charge here. So why are all of these null? If we jump back to tenure, we can see that these people they've basically just started their contract. They haven't been with this company for very long, which is why these are all showing as zeros. Now, in the machine learning world, having these as nulls is going to pose a problem to us. We don't want these to show up as null for us. It would be much better if they showed up as a 0, because essentially 25.75 times 0 equals 0. So what we can do here is, the beginning of our cleanup. So we're going to go and hit replace values, and we're going to look for that null. We're going to replace it with a 0. Hey, Hyunjin, you can hear me okay now?
Yeah, much clear. It's better.
Okay, cool. I just wanted to make sure. Cool. So that's some initial cleanup. We've changed that over. Another thing that we want to do here, this senior citizen right now is coming in as a whole number. In reality, we can see here there's only 2 distinct values. It's only either 0 or 1. We can click here and we can see that. It's only a 0 or 1. So this really isn't a whole number. It's more of a category. Are they a senior citizen, or are they not a senior citizen? And to that end, what I would do here is I would actually change the type of this and change it to a text, or I could change it to a true false or a binary. In this case, I'm just going to change it to a text field to align with all these other text fields. The other thing I would do is make sure that our monthly charges and our total charges fields are decimals, which they are, and everything else is looking good. We've got this as a whole number, which it is, and it's got quite a bit of variety among its profile distribution. There's a whole bunch of different things that tenure could come in as. Oh, okay, I see. Got a load more. Let's take away this here. I think it doesn't like that I had sorted these rows. So we're going to take out this sort. There we go. Now we can see that tenure has a whole bunch of different values in it, which is what we expect. And so for the most part at this point, we are good on the initial cleanup of this data. So now we're just going to add our destination. So we're going to send it back to the same lakehouse that we had. And that is our ProServeIT Academy. And I'm actually going to call this our silver customer churn. And here it's going to allow me to say, to finally set out what are the destination types for these. Everything looks good to me. Save settings. And then I can go and publish this. And it's named Dataflow1. We can change the name, obviously. I've changed these ones. Just forgot to do that at the end. And it's going to go through an initial refresh of this data to get it in there. Now, we are going to revisit that data, and we're going to do some splitting of that data to get it into a cleaner data model that can be used for business intelligence later on. But while we wait for this initial refresh to happen and the data to get loaded into our lakehouse, we're going to go and jump over to a notebook where we're going to do a very similar cleanup in a notebook format. And again, sorry, Mira, I will jump back to your question after. And we might want to actually take that one offline after. But yes, we can take a look at that. I'm going to jump in. So again, I said next part we're going to do is a notebook doing the same kind of. Okay, so we've got our notebook up. Again, this is more of a coding environment than what we saw before, which was very graphical based. And first thing we're going to do is we're going to add in our Academy Lakehouse so we can quickly and easily reference stuff that's coming from our initial Lakehouse. Yes. And one of the cool things that is possible is we can drag and drop from our Lakehouse direct into here, and it's actually going to write the code for us to select data out of our initial data set. And I'm just going to remove that because I don't want to be limited at 1,000 rows. I want to see all of it. It will take a second while a session gets started. You can see that down here. It's starting a session, and then it's going to run this code for us. While we wait for that, similar to what we saw before, similar to what we did in the data flow, what I'm doing here is I'm looking for empty rows, and I'm saying, hey, for this data frame, so all of my customer churn notebook data, for all of that, which is showing here, this is all of it again. For all of that data, I want you to find any empty rows or empty rows per column, and I want you to sum them up and tell me how many of those empty rows are there. I'm going to run this, and it's actually going to fail. So don't be surprised when this fails. I'm doing this on purpose. It's saying that this data frame object has no attribute is NA. It's got no attribute is NA. Now, why is that? That's because this is NA function is related to a tool called pandas, which is another way of having data frames or data tables. But by default, Fabric gives you this Spark SQL stuff, which is different than pandas. So what we can do here, which I kind of want to show off and show you how interesting some of this stuff is. Just give me a second. I'm going to reshare my screen out. I'm going to ask Copilot if it can help me write code for this. We'll have to see if it can, because this is kind of a meeting Copilot versus, there we go. Very nice of it. Notebook coding for you. So I'm just saying, hey, put this into pandas DF, and I'm going to Spark DF just so we can look at this. I'm actually naming this Spark DF just DF data frame. So I'm going to take this off here, and I'm going to run that. And while we wait for that to finish, I'm going to update this to name it the same as what I just created here, this pandas data frame. And we're going to run this again. And we're going to see that, oh, everything is coming through here. And it's saying that there is no empties in my total charges. It's interesting. Now what I'm going to do is, so it's not finding any empties because those were nulls before. But what it is going to find is not that one. We're going to now put in our code to check the data types on these. And this is where we'll start to see something interesting in our code, is we're going to see that while monthly charges is a float, which means a decimal, total charges, it's pulled in as a string, an object. Why is it doing that? Because there's nulls in here. Because total charges does actually have those nulls. So it's not empty, there's a null in there. Because of those nulls, total charges is now coming back as an object. And that's not good because it should be a decimal. So we're going to go and clean that up. And we can do that pretty quickly and easily, single line of code here. So what we're saying here is this total charges field, I actually want it to be the 10-year times the monthly charges. So if it's 0 times the monthly charges, it will come back as 0, but it won't be a null anymore. And then the rest of them will just flow naturally. We're going to run that. And then once that's done, now we can go and update our data types. There we go. So another thing to note is that senior citizen was picked up as an integer, a whole number. And like we did in the data flow, it's better if this is an object text field. And then from there, we're just flipping senior citizen to an object, and we're changing total charges to a float. We run that. And now we can look at our data types again, which is just this. And now we have senior citizen as an object, tenure is a whole number, and monthly charges and total charges are floats. Now, the next piece is actually a bit heavy. I'm going to try and walk through it as quickly as possible because I know we're kind of limited on time here. This is kind of the next step for us to clean our data prior to building out our machine learning model. And there's going to be some machine learning stuff in here, but hopefully it will make sense. Then I have a little function that I'm calling organize my columns for me. Now, in machine learning, there's always a dependent variable. The dependent variable is what you're trying to predict. So in this case, we're trying to predict customer churn. And then there's two different types of field in here. There's two different types of field. One of the types of field, they are categorical fields. These are things, typically, there's not many options in them. So as you remember, senior citizen is categorical because it's just a 0 or a 1. There's a category. Are they senior citizen? Are they not? Do they have a partner? Do they not? Do they have dependents? Do they not? But then you get into continuous fields. Continuous fields are things like tenure, because it could be a range anywhere from 0, which we've seen, people that have been with the company for no time, all the way up to people that have been with the company for 64, 72 months. And therefore, it's not a category. There's a continuous range of things that it could be. And it's, again, monthly charges, continuous, total charges, continuous. But do they have tech support? That's a categorical. And so what this code is doing is finding things that are categorical, finding all the columns that are categorical, taking those categorical ones and saying, hey, anything that's not categorical, we're going to assume it's continuous. And then we're going to split these up into those three types of columns: dependent, continuous, and categorical. I'm just going to execute this. And we can see now that there's churn. It's in our dependent. There's tenure, monthly charges, and total charges. Those are our continuous variables. And then gender, senior citizen, all of these things, these are our categorical variables. And this here is where we're going to stop with respect to notebook cleanup, because after this, we start to get into machine learning. So
Yeah.
one thing I did want to try and cover, I don't think we're going to have time for it, unfortunately, was some modeling of the data that we landed in here. So I'm going to try and do it real quick. Should be simple, but sometimes demos take longer than you expect. Again, I'm going to get data. So we're going to try and grab our silver data that we cleaned, and we're going to try and model it real quick. So there's our silver customer churn data. Silver meaning that we've cleaned it. And here's what we're going to do. I'm going to duplicate this. So now we have two of the same query. I'm going to go and remove tenure, monthly charges, and total charges. I'm going to remove those columns in this one. And I'm going to, for any business intelligence person out here, I'm going to name this dim customer. And this is all the information about each customer ID. And this one here, I'm going to collect tenure. I'm going to collect monthly charges, total charges. I'm also going to collect customer ID, and I'm going to remove other columns. And now I'm going to call this fact customer. And if you're in the data warehousing world or the data world at all, you'll know dimensions and facts. And this is a real quick and easy way to split data into those things. We're going to add our destination for each, Lakehouse. Next. And Shinjin, you're probably going to have to stop me, aren't you? PSIT Academy. Click on our Academy, and it's already named fact customer. And this would essentially be what we could do for our gold layer. I'm going to save that. Customer, again, Lakehouse. And even in one of these data flows, you're able to land data in, you're able to land queries into different tables, which is cool. So we're that. This is our dim customer. Next. Just gonna leave that as is. Save that. And I'm gonna hit publish, and then I'll jump back to, here we go. Cool. And so that there, Dataflow 2, which is gonna run in a few minutes, that's getting us from that silver layer into a gold modeled layer. Cool. Thank you very much, everyone, for your time, and looking forward to our next session where we get into machine learning, which is going to be super cool.